What's happening, y'all? Welcome inside the Fantasy Stock Exchange. Bush coming at you solo today to break down my tale of the tape for Anthony Richardson, telling the story of Anthony Richardson from start to finish. Of course, this is a very hot topic right now after the NFL Combine, so I figured I would tackle the most controversial player in Superflex rookie drafts right from the jump. If you guys missed Bijan Robinson's tale of the tape, I suggest you go check it out, but this will be everything you need to know about Anthony Richardson to get you prepared for rookie drafts this spring. So we're not going to waste any time. Let's get right into it. All right, Anthony Richardson, quarterback of the Florida Gators. This is his tale of the tape, age 21.7 years old, standing a whopping 6'4", 244 pounds. Basic information, we're going to start off. He was a four-star recruit, ninth-rated dual-threat quarterback coming out of high school in the 2020 recruiting class from Gainesville, Florida. He stayed in the state of Florida to go play for his hometown Florida Gators. Richardson was stuck behind Kyle Trask in 2020, Buccaneer great, and 2021 starter Emory Jones, although he did make appearances on the field running the ball and trick plays and that kind of stuff in 2021, including, a decent amount of snaps in games against Georgia and LSU. He didn't fully start taking over this offense as the starter until 2022 for the first time, and he got to showcase some of that high ceiling, dynamic dual threat quarterback with a rocket arm that we love out of our fantasy football quarterbacks. He got everybody excited right from jump. Week 1 against Utah had a monster game, and everybody was talking about this dude as potentially the 101, potentially a super, super high rookie pick, and we've kind of come full circle at this point. And then he showed out last weekend at the NFL Scouting Combine, posting the best athleticism score for a quarterback in the history of the NFL Scouting Combine. And now Dynasty gamers everywhere are wondering, where do we value this guy? Do we vault him all the way up to 101? Do we value him somewhere in between? Is he still, the 106, 107 area where he was going before the Combine? How does AR-15 truly stack up? We are going to find out in this video. So let's start off with the 6 fundamental traits for the quarterback position. With each trait, I'm going to give a brief overview, kind of what goes into the grade that I gave the player, why it's important, and how we can quantify it and cross-reference it to metrics. So the first thing is accuracy. If you're going to play quarterback in the NFL, you kind of need to be an accurate quarterback. This could be anything from ball placement, their mechanics, accuracy from off platform and under pressure, and also just raw completion percentage and some of the metrics that we know translate to accuracy. So this is, without a doubt, right away, the first thing that stands out with Anthony Richardson's game, because I am no quarterback guru by any means. I'm just a guy on YouTube scouting fantasy football prospects. But even I can see that this guy's mechanics need work. He short hops throws, he overthrows his receivers pretty routinely, and he often puts the ball in harm's way because he doesn't have the greatest ball placement. The bright side is this, though, with Anthony Richardson. It looks to be coachable, right? He's only a one-year starter. He's a raw player. It's a possibility that an NFL coaching staff and a quarterback coach can coach this out of Anthony Richardson, but it's probably going to take some time. And these clips do not look great. And let's take a look at some of them. The first one here, you guys can see that he has this receiver up the seam, inside leverage. If he throws this ball inside where only his receiver can get it, this is probably a big play down the field. Instead, he overshoots his receiver to the outside, and it's an incomplete pass. These are a lot of the incompletions that you're going to see from him on tape. Again, another seam ball here. He flat out misses an open guy. He's got pressure in his face on this clip, and I realize that these clips that I've showed you are all against the Georgia defense. But again, this is a good gauge of what he's going to see in the NFL. Trust me, there's a lot of misses against Kentucky. There was a lot of misses against USF. He didn't just miss throws against Georgia, and he misses this guy high over the middle as well. He's definitely inaccurate. There's really no way around it. He'll probably never be in the NFL without some major, major steps on his part, a 65+% completion percentage type of passer. And here were the collegiate averages of the current top 12 dynasty quarterbacks, right? The guys that you guys probably have on your rosters right now: Josh Allen, Mahomes, Hurts, Burrow, Watson, Dak Prescott, these types of dudes. These were their averages in college. 64.68% completion percentage, with nobody below a 56.5%, which was Josh Allen, who we know was notoriously inaccurate coming out of Wyoming. Anthony Richardson is even more inaccurate, sitting at 53.8% completion percentage compared to Josh Allen's 56.5%. Career catchable pass percentage average of the top 12 dynasty quarterbacks was 79.83%. So this was their percentage of passes that were deemed to be catchable. Lowest was Hurts at 75.1%. Anthony Richardson checks in at 71.5%, the lowest of that bunch. Career percentage of passes deemed to be on target, so not just catchable, but actually good ball placement. 74.88% was the average of the top 12 dynasty quarterbacks, with Jalen Hurts again coming in at the lowest with 73%. Anthony Richardson with an absolute woof, 58.6%. So this guy is inaccurate on tape. In the metrics, this is by far his biggest hurdle to overcome in the NFL. We've seen guys do it. It's not impossible. We've seen Jalen Hurts get more accurate. We've seen Lamar Jackson get more accurate. We've seen Josh Allen get more accurate. But it's going to take a lot of time and a lot of work to do on Anthony Richardson's part. So definitely the biggest hurdle for him. Let's get into some more positive traits for Anthony Richardson. Number 2 is arm talent. Obviously, when you are a high arm talent quarterback, you have the possibility to make big plays happen down the field outside of structure. And in fantasy football, this usually results in us winning our weeks. So here's part of the draw to Anthony Richardson. This is why NFL scouts are so excited about this guy. You'll see why he lit up the combine radar gun with 60 miles per hour on a throw like this one, right over the middle between two defenders' eyes. You can see the velocity that this guy throws with, and you can also see how effortless it is for him to flick the ball downfield deep. It's almost kind of Michael Vick-esque, the way that he releases the ball and is able to just fly it downfield for like 60 yards. And we saw those throws during the on-field portion of the combine as well. If his receiver isn't PI'd on this throw, he probably has a big play and potentially a touchdown. Then there's this throw, who we've probably already seen on Twitter against LSU, where he's rolling, he resets, he launches an absolute moon ball downfield over the defender's shoulder for a touchdown. In his only season starting this season, he ranked second in this quarterback class out of all the quarterbacks with a 5.5 big-time throw percentage. So what we're talking about here is throws that are difficult to complete. Anthony Richardson was doing it at the second highest rate outside of CJ Stroud, who led the class. It's clear that if he can refine his accuracy and he can refine his throwing mechanics, he'll have a tier 1 arm in the NFL comparable to the greats at the position. Josh Allen's, Patrick Mahomes. It is not a question mark for him. He can have that Trevor Lawrence, Justin Herbert type of arm as well. So definitely a big time strength for Anthony Richardson is his arm. Now we get on to another thing that directly impacts us in fantasy, which is mobility, right? In most of our leagues, you get 1 fantasy point for every 10 rushing yards comparatively to 25 passing yards for every 1 fantasy point. So it is very beneficial if our quarterbacks can run, in addition to the fact that you usually get 6 points per rushing touchdown versus 4 for a passing touchdown. So this is the Konami code factor, and Anthony Richardson absolutely has it. This is where it starts to get stupid, right? The average yards per carry of the top 12 dynasty quarterbacks, according to Keep Trade Cut right now, in college was 6.16 yards per carry. Anthony Richardson has averaged 7.6 over his career, which is higher than some of the best rushing quarterbacks in the NFL right now, to go along with 1,147 yards and 12 touchdowns rushing. Again, he only started 1 season. He was not a heavily productive guy in college like Lamar Jackson or Jalen Hurts were, playing for multiple years. We also know that he's a good enough athlete to run in the NFL as well, because no big deal. He kind of just shattered every quarterback record at the combine just a week ago. Cam Newton was the previous holder for the highest relative athletic score for any quarterback to ever test at 10.00. Anthony Richardson shattered that record, running a 4.43 40-yard dash at 244 pounds. And if we're talking about how that would translate to the running back position, we're talking about a weight-adjusted speed score of 126.7, which is better than Jonathan Taylor. It's better than Saquon Barkley. It's better than Derrick Henry. It's better than Adrian Peterson, who are basically the freakiest running back athletes to play the position of the last 10 to 15 years. He set combine records for vertical jump. He set combine records for broad jump for quarterbacks. And you can see just by taking a look at this run versus LSU, just how freakish of an athlete the guy is, or how he can use his mobility to buy time in the pocket here against Georgia. So Anthony Richardson has the mobility. He has the arm talent. Let's get into the next trait, which is efficiency, right? This is your ability to create positive plays to move your offense, to limit negative plays from keeping your offense off the field by turning the ball over. Basically, are you an asset to your team, or are you always making bad decisions? This is generally how we can decipher which quarterbacks are good and which quarterbacks are not. Things like passer rating and passing grade and all that kind of stuff. This is very difficult to break down for Anthony Richardson because he kind of has the Cam Newton factor, right? The Superman complex, where 5.6% is his career big time throw percentage. but he also leads the class in career turnover worthy play percentage at 3.8%. So that was the worst among the top 5 quarterbacks, CJ Stroud, Bryce Young, Will Levis, Hendon Hooker. And over his career, he's had a problem a little bit with bad decision making. But overall, though, I was impressed with some of the maturity he showed just as a 1-year starter in his decision making. Sometimes he would just, take off and run, take a sack, throw the ball away, whatever the case is. It's not a complete product yet, but I was impressed and he did show some promise in that area. Other efficiency metrics that you want to look at, he's going to score pretty poorly in as well. His PFF passing grade of 70.5, for reference, is the worst in the class. And all of the other top quarterbacks were over 83 in their best seasons. And the average of the top 12 dynasty quarterbacks right now per keep trade cut was 87.6 in their college best season. So we're talking about a guy that is really well behind the curve from a passing grade perspective. But here's the thing. At the next level, if the NFL coaching staff designs an offense around him the way that they've done for some of the quarterbacks in recent years that have developed, like Jalen Hurts, Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, or Justin Fields, then the blueprint is absolutely there to aid his development as a passer. And especially if we were to go to, say, Indianapolis, right? If he gets drafted by the Colts 4th overall, he could work with a guy like Shane Steichen, who just made Jalen Hurts into an MVP candidate. So that would be a big time landing spot for him. Now let's get into the next trait, which is basically playmaking, deep passing. How often are you creating plays outside of structure? He's a natural born playmaker, right? You'll see it on these clips, evading pressure, working outside the pocket, making people miss. Sometimes he looks to throw, sometimes he looks to run. And I think he has a very good feel for when to do either, whether it's, pick up the first down or get a play downfield. His downfield work suffered a bit because of his inaccuracy. Sometimes he'll miss throws downfield, but he doesn't shy away from still pushing the ball down the field. He led the class this year with an average depth of target of 11.6. So he's looking to make big plays, which is what we want out of our fantasy quarterbacks. However, his best season adjusted deep completion percentage of 42.2% was well below the other top quarterbacks in this class, and it was 10% worse than the current top 12 dynasty quarterbacks, according to Keep Trade Cut. Now, of course, guys like Joe Burrow are really going to inflate those statistics because of how good they were in college, but the point still stands. He's not that well developed as a deep passer, as an accurate passer quite yet. Number 6, final fundamental trait is how do you handle pressure, right? This was an area I was very surprised. I thought he was going to be bad under pressure, have the superhero complex or whatever, but he is absolutely fearless inside the pocket. And he actually did showcase some good decision-making under pressure most of the time. Like I said, in that game against Georgia, you can see him stepping up, keeping his eyes downfield, and getting the ball out on time and on target. There's another clip I wanted to play against Tennessee, but it got flagged by YouTube, where he sidesteps like 4 defenders inside the pocket, throws the ball downfield, and his receiver makes a play and he scores a touchdown on it. It showcases how well he can handle pressure in most cases, but when it went bad, it went really bad, right? If you guys go watch the Kentucky game, if you go watch the game against South Florida, everything went out the window. He was bad under pressure. He was inaccurate as hell. And those games hopefully do not happen in the NFL for Anthony Richardson, but he probably needs some coaching at the NFL level to be able to get out of that headspace, because he was probably just completely frustrated. His pressure stats are heavily affected by those bad games. His passing grade versus pressure this year was 41.9, which is the worst in the class. And the one thing that all of the elite dynasty quarterbacks have in common is good passing grades under pressure in college. You guys can see the top 12 quarterbacks in dynasty, all of them had better grades than that by a lot. And most of them were above 70, which is a lot better than what Anthony Richardson posted. And the guys that didn't were guys like Lamar Jackson, guys like Patrick Mahomes, Jalen Hurts, and Dak Prescott, who are capable of running, which we know Anthony Richardson can do. But even guys like Lamar, Fields, Murray, Dak, Watson, Hurts, all of those guys that can run had much better grades in that area than Anthony Richardson. So it's definitely a problem for him. He needs to get better under pressure. He needs to stop melting down when things go poorly for him, but it's definitely something that I did see some promise in. Now let's get into the intangibles with Anthony Richardson. And obviously this would be like red flags, work ethic, leadership, personality stuff. The shittiest thing for me as a fantasy analyst who's on YouTube trying to evaluate quarterbacks for my fantasy drafts is that I don't have any idea what his makeup is above the shoulders, because I can't sit down with the guy. I basically have to rely on the opinions of others, which is sometimes tough to do. But I firmly believe if you put Zach Wilson's brain in Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, or Jalen Hurts, I seriously guarantee that they are all NFL busts at the next level, because those guys needed development. And the reason they were able to develop was because they were so good above the shoulders, such great work ethic, leadership, football IQ, and all that kind of stuff. But we do have some promising reports on Anthony Richardson, right? He supposedly interviewed very well at the combine for a lot of teams, and that I think generally the consensus is he's a pretty intelligent guy and picks things up quickly. And to be honest, I do believe it. Watching his tape, you can kind of see how he developed throughout the course of the season of his first year as a starter in 2022. I think we would have gotten a guaranteed answer with him coming back to Florida for his senior year, but he didn't actually end up doing that. He decided to come out for the draft instead. Red flags are obviously some of the metrics that I outlined with his accuracy, with his under pressure statistics. Those are definitely red flags on his profile. And also the fact that he was just a one-year starter is usually a red flag for NFL teams, which could affect his NFL draft capital. So bottom line is, let's get into the final grades. Based on a scale of 1100, which is the scale that I grade on, he graded out as 911.25 out of 1100, or an early second rounder. He is currently my quarterback 3 in the class per my grades, and I'll break down Bryce Young and CJ Stroud in the coming days, but I actually would select him, gun to my head, over CJ Stroud in a rookie draft right now in most team construction situations, because even though my grading system only goes to 110 per trait, I can't really weight the actual physical tools of Anthony Richardson properly, because they help trump so many of his deficiencies that I can't really weight that effectively. So he has a trump card that he's so much more athletic, so much better arm talent than every other quarterback in this class, that you kind of have to subjectively just take that into account when you're actually doing your rookie draft. So even though Stroud is the better real life NFL quarterback prospect, Anthony Richardson is much better for fantasy. And this is a higher grade than I gave Sam Howell, who was my quarterback 1 last year, comparable grade to, I believe, Trey Lance when he was coming out. So that's kind of the grading portion that I'm at right now. Comparable players, Richardson himself actually said that he thinks he's a mix between like Lamar Jackson and Cam Newton, which I actually don't think is a bad comparison. I think that's like a fair comparison. For me, he's more of like a raw version of Justin Fields, and you guys can see his player card on the screen right now. It shows what games I watched of him. We actually did a film session over on our Patreon with Anthony Richardson. If you want to check that out as well, I pre-recorded that, and you can check that out on our Patreon. But basically, a raw version of Justin Fields is what you're getting for Anthony Richardson. And Justin Fields is not a polished prospect either. So an even more raw version of him. So let's get into best fits. And to me, the best fit for Anthony Richardson is a team with a secured coaching staff that ideally knows how to develop a raw quarterback like this, and probably would like to let him sit for a little bit. For me, that's one of a few places. I think primarily the Detroit Lions, because they have Jared Goff in-house right now, and they have a stable coaching staff with good weapons. So I think Anthony Richardson can really develop in Detroit, but we really don't know what their plan is at quarterback. We don't know if they're just going to stick with Goff, if they're going to go after Richardson. So they're kind of like a shaky landing spot just in terms of will they draft a quarterback. But I think if they do and they draft Richardson, it would make a lot of sense, and he would be a great fit there. I also think more realistically, the best landing spot he could go to is the Indianapolis Colts, because like I said, they have Shane Steichen in-house, who just successfully turned Jalen Hurts from a project quarterback who had question marks into an MVP candidate. And Seattle would also be a good sleeper landing spot as well, because they could let him sit behind Geno Smith, at least for the next 1 or 2 years, and have him as the plan long-term, because they just paid Geno Smith a pretty big contract. So those would be the 3 that I think would be best for him. I think Carolina, Las Vegas, and Atlanta, who are also in the quarterback market, are fine spots for him as well, but just not as good as the other 3 that I outlined. I think the worst spot that he could go to is the Houston Texans, assuming he has to play right away. But if they sign, Jimmy Garoppolo or something to make sure that Richardson isn't starting right away, I don't think that would be a terrible landing spot either. So in terms of the brass tacks, where do we take this guy in rookie drafts? What do we do with him in rookie drafts? There should be absolutely no doubt in anybody's mind that this is one of a very few select players in this draft class, and probably the only one that would eventually cost 3+ first rounders and go in the top 5 overall of Superflex startups if he ends up hitting his ceiling. But we need to factor in risk if he doesn't hit, because I firmly believe that it's going to completely depend on landing spot for him. It's going to completely depend on what he has above the shoulders, which we don't know as fantasy players. And I haven't heard anything but positives on that aspect of his game, but I will change my tune if we hear things like he doesn't work hard or he's bad leader or whatever the case is come out from now till the NFL draft. To me, it's not as simple as saying just take the guy with the highest ceiling, because I know a lot of fantasy analysts will tell you that. You're like, you got to take the guy with the highest ceiling no matter what, because we don't know what's going to happen. But to me, you have to factor in ranges of outcomes. For me, this is the 103 in rookie drafts. That is where I would feel comfortable taking him, preferably 104, but 103 specifically is the first spot I would really consider him, because I still prefer Bryce Young, because I think his ceiling is still very high, as well as his floor being so much higher than Anthony Richardson's. To me, the ceiling for Bryce Young is a top 8 to 10 startup pick or a top 12 startup pick just like Joe Burrow, Deshaun Watson, or Dak Prescott in recent years, I already have him ranked as my 14th overall player. So I still think he has high value just by being a young quarterback who's exciting, which is definitely a lower ceiling than Anthony Richardson, but it's not by a crazy amount, right? It's not by a shit ton. And the floor for Richardson is legitimately, he's reduced to a gadget player or potentially out of the league before his rookie contract is even over. Like, that's how low his floor is, in my opinion. He could just not even be a quarterback. He could switch to tight end 3 years into his career if he doesn't end up having the mental makeup to play the quarterback position. So Bryce's range of outcomes, to me, I'm much more comfortable with, because there's like an 80% chance he's a top 10 to 12 dynasty quarterback for the next 3 to 4 years and beyond. And Richardson's like a 30% chance that he's a top 5 dynasty quarterback for the next 3 to 4 years and beyond. But there's also that chance that he's a massive bust and you wasted a very, very high rookie pick and passed on a better prospect like Bryce Young. So to me, it probably is also going to depend on what your dynasty team actually looks like, right? Because if you already have Jalen Hurts and Joe Burrow in place, then you could afford to take a risk on Anthony Richardson. But if you have Kenny Pickett and Kirk Cousins, then you probably should take Bryce Young, because he's probably going to see your lineup faster, and he's also going to be the safer pick because you're not as well off at that position. So I don't blame people for swinging for upside, taking Anthony Richardson potentially as high as 101 or 102. But for me, 103 is the sweet spot, the perfect blend of risk and reward and upside to take that swing. So for me, take the better bets with Bijan Robinson at 101 and Bryce Young at 102, and take Anthony Richardson no higher than 103 in your Superflex rookie drafts. But I will say, if you guys play in one quarterback leagues, then I would take Anthony Richardson probably as the QB1, because in those type of formats, the QB depth is not as scarce, and you can afford to take big swings a lot easier than you can in Superflex leagues. And I think a late first round pick is probably what I'd feel comfortable spending on Richardson in a one quarterback format. So I hope that you guys enjoyed this. This is a bit of a longer one. I probably won't go quite this long on every prospect, but for Richardson, there's just so much to talk through. So if you guys enjoyed, if you feel like you got some value, some actionable advice from this, leave a like down below, subscribe to the channel if you are new, and comment down below what you think of Anthony Richardson. I'm happy to engage with you down there. If you guys want to support us in any way, go check out our sponsors, aura.com/fantasy stock exchange, for a 14-day free trial for the best cybersecurity tool you will ever need. Check out our sponsors over at Underdog Fantasy. Use that promo code FSE as well to get 100% back on whatever you put in. And you can also run some early best ball drafts, do some big boards right now. Tons of values on these rookies right now. So if that interests you, check out the links down below in the description. But with that being said, peace out, and I'll talk to you soon.
Why you and me